Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
On the best of days and on the worst of days, family is a complicated thing, and if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and pick their brains, not just about current projects, but state of the industry, how they got started, so on and so forth, in a light and conversational manner as best we can. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, we certainly hope that you would. I mean, you're listening, so you can do so over at Apple, over at Spotify, and you can find us archived with every single one of our episodes over at our YouTube channel. Also, why not follow us on social media too? You can do that at either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One. For all sorts of updates on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And finally, and as I like to say, maybe most importantly, please visit us over at In the Seats, where our hardworking team is cracking away on movie news, reviews, lists, and all sorts of fun stuff from the world of entertainment and beyond. Because that's what we do, and we'd love it if you'd come check it out. But something else we'd love you to check out is a new film that hit VOD this past Friday, and it is called Reunion. It is a chilling little messed up little thriller from writer-director Jake Mahaffy. If I apologize if I screwed that one up, but it's a real bent, twisted little affair as a pregnant woman returns home to her recently deceased grandparents' old family house to spend time with her mother, from which she's been estranged for many years. And as you can imagine, the relationship is a bit tenuous, but it goes from tenuous to even worse without spoiling too much. It stars Julia Ormond and a bunch of fantastic actors. It was shot in New Zealand primarily, and it's one of those little under-the-radar films that we would love for you to check out. And when we talk with Jake, who is, like I said, the writer-director of this film, we talked about the origin of the story and how he sort of got it all started, and just sort of diving into a real sort of bent character study, which this film really is, because it starts one way, but then it's not afraid to get a little weird the further down the rabbit hole we go, and it's a movie worth checking out, and just like this interview with Jake, which we hope you enjoy. All right, bye. Now, I mean, first off, congratulations on the film. I loved it. And I mean, I love how it's sort of uncomfortable family drama, but then really isn't afraid to get super fucking weird by the end of it all.
Yeah.
Walk me through sort of the origin of the story.
Well, the process of getting the whole thing started, it began with as a comedy, actually, back in 2008. Just with speaking with friends and stuff, we talked about crazy mothers and sort of shared anecdotes with different people about passive aggression and manipulation, all these kinds of things, and how it became humorous over time. You know, first growing up in that environment, it's your reality, it's overwhelming, and all that bizarre sort
Right.
of gaslighting is just part of your reality, but your schema really for perceiving the world. But then over time, as you get out and you sort of adjust your psychology to other people, you realize how absurd it is. And yet that person, you know, in these cases, the mother, persists in that. And it's just interesting, the interplay between being triggered by that, or, you know, sort of provoked by that rather, versus being able to deal with it. And so I had a super low budget film planned to shoot on Cape Cod. I was living in New England, so super low budget film with just two actresses and a cabin. But then I immigrated to New Zealand, and in the meantime, I started to develop it, and it just turned dark. At one point, it got really dark, super evil and nihilistic, and then I sort of backed off that and made it more allegorical, and it became about still that core relationship, but also about time and using alchemy as sort of a embodiment of the psychological issues.
For sure. No, I mean, I think that's kind of what I loved about it, because it's really playing in very much in the headspace of sort of that relationship, rather than sort of trying to focus on, you know, the horrible thing that happened or the horrible things that may have happened. I'm kind of
Exactly.
curious, when you're doing something like this, how much sort of research do you have to put into sort of correctly depicting sort of that back and forth? Because I mean, I can imagine if you stray one way too far on the other end, it's either going to be, like you say, maybe a comedy or a little too dark and a little too nihilistic. This film really does sort of walk that center line.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's different for everybody. That's the thing. It always comes down to with filmmaking is it all depends on the audience or the particular viewer. For some people, it won't be dramatic enough. Other people will be lost in all the sort of convoluted interchange, uh, and you just have to follow whatever appeals to you. I mean, so on the research, it's just I mean, it's basic. It comes from experience or just from talking with people and being able to, imagine or use theory of mind to anticipate how that's going to play out. But it's and just what you find funny in writing it. And then all that planning, though, in the process of filmmaking, you got to account for the fact that all that planning ends up getting just chucked or changed in the actual execution, because then you show up and it depends on who the actors are, what they bring or how they feel in the day, how much time you have to shoot or do retakes, and and then what you do in the edit. So all that planning is sort of, it's a display of intention, but in the end, it's only a dream, and then you try to make out of it what you have on from the material on the day. So the psychological stuff wasn't so much the research as much as the other, sort of alchemical and occult elements. So.
And I mean, casting on something like this is always so vital. Talk to me a little bit about finding Julia, because I mean, she manages to be sympathetic but also scary at the same time.
Yeah, that was so we knew in order to get the funding for the film, there had to be one actress that was going to be a name recognition. So we decided, we found a really great local actress for Ellie, who's Emma Draper, and she was great. So we said, okay, well, let's go out to the mother. And we just, Mike Ryan, who's a U.S. producer, had a casting agent in New York who gave us a list of people that might be interested at the budget and at the concept, and also would be available. So, there's a short list, and for those, you just find the ones you're most interested in, and you just start going out. And she responded to the material. We had some discussions on Skype, and then it went from there. Yeah, so it was pretty standard casting process, but it was great, to have that casting agent put these names forward, and she was at the top of the list.
Did you get a lot of rehearsal prep time, or was it just a question of you had to sort of jump in and go the minute everyone was on set?
Pretty much, yeah. I had so with films nowadays, and especially with low budget or no budget films, or in this case a low budget film, there's no rehearsal. So I had time with all the actors except Julia, who was flying in from LA. We had about a day of rehearsal for each person, and then she showed up the day before, so we fit her for costumes that night, and the first day we just started rolling. So. And what happens then is you end up doing, especially in the first few days, sometimes longer, essentially what you're shooting are rehearsals of the character, and and that just washes out in production and editing. Yeah.
Does it help a story like this to be a shorter shoot? Because I mean, there's a certain energy that you have to sort of maintain the entire time. If this was like a 3 month shoot, it would be hard to sort of sustain that, but it's easier to hold over, say, 2 or 3 weeks, which is probably what a shoot like this was.
Yeah, this was I think it was 4 it was 4 weeks, and it was 6 days, 5 days, 6 days, 5 days, I
Right.
think, or something like that, where it was and that's a great question, because energy is a lot to do with it. So generally I would say yes, like working fast and keeping energy up is great, because that does translate into performance, cinematography, all that energy. But it's not just the time, because even in a shortened schedule, things can get bogged down in different ways. If there's a lot of effects or complicated shots or lighting or something, then that just sucks in time that you're not actually shooting. So the energy comes from shooting quickly, not from preparing to shoot.
Okay. How would you define the film? Because I mean, I'm always curious when I see stuff that really does sort of successfully straddle so many different genres. Like, I'm kind of curious from your perspective, what would you call Reunion?
As a genre, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought of it as a uh, magical realist type film, a dark magical realist film, with based in psychology. So I don't know. It's kind of I guess it's kind of a psychological thriller with magical realism.
are those the kind of stories that you ultimately get drawn to? Something with a little bit of fantasy, but grounded ultimately in sort of real things that happen?
Well, what I like all kinds of stuff, both watching and making. But I'm really interested in subjective realism. So the idea of presenting a character's reality, no matter how
Right.
altered or it is, and yeah, if that involves fantastical elements or transcendent or spiritual elements, yeah, absolutely, I'm very interested in that.
What got you into this business? Can you think back? Is there like a moment or a movie in your young life that sort of made the pivot for you to sort of make you want to become a filmmaker?
Yeah, um, I was pretty. So I grew up and didn't. It was very. I grew up in a religious house that we weren't allowed to see a lot of movies. Was very selective on what we could see and watch, which is ultimately that in of itself I thought was a good thing in retrospect. Because it wasn't sort of I wasn't constantly flooded with media, and every moment was sort of a special thing. So I had more anticipation of it. But yeah, it was just the idea that you could enter into a world that you would have some control over, that you could create. I think it was that idea. Even when I would play as a child, it was about sort of creating worlds more than, in some cases, if it wasn't just by myself, than anything else. So I think that's what originally it was. As far as a film, I mean, it's hard to say. Probably when I was little, so I was like 7 or 8 I can't remember, but like the Indiana Jones thing that
Uh,
came out, couldn't believe it. I was like, how this is exactly what it's supposed to be like. So obviously I haven't taken that route towards mainstream type stuff, but that was the initial thing. And then over time, as I was exposed to more complex and sophisticated films, I really that really sparked my imagination a lot. So that's sort of where I headed.
and we're in such an interesting time right now, just because there always seems to be more creative freedom in the no budget, low budget realm. But the second you get to sort of the middle upper tier, like the middle tier is basically gone. And it's
Hmm.
either you're making a Marvel movie or you're making a no budget movie, and there isn't
Hmm.
that much room in between. And I'm kind of
Yeah.
curious, is it is it a positive thing? Is it a negative thing from your perspective? Because I mean, I can see both sides of the coin. You know what I mean? It's one of those things I'm always curious about, because especially right now during COVID, as we're all sort of bombarded with stuff, it's hard for content to sort of bubble to the top, if they, if that's the right expression to use, but you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah. What can you just repeat the
Just
exact
in
question?
terms of, for you as like a storyteller, having to sort of balance the two universes of the, do I try to go make bigger, larger, huge stuff and make a bunch of money, or do I
Mhm.
stay and make no budget stuff and be more sort of creatively fulfilled, or can you find a path between the two?
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. Well, that's a great question. I mean, yeah, the issue of scope is one. I have dozens of ideas, things I want to do, I would love to do, that range from epic to very small scale and intimate. So, and that's ultimately what determines the budget in a lot of cases. So, I just know that at this point, looking at the world, a lot of things that I'm interested in, even though they're epic, they're in scope, they're not necessarily fitting the kind of big budget films that are getting made. Does that make sense? So, like for example,
No, totally,
one
totally.
of the films I want to make is a medieval 2001 about a papal legate who discovers alchemical documents and discovers the secrets of the universe. But it turns from absolute historical medieval sort of uh, violent sort of film into a psychedelic, uh,
Right,
trance.
right.
So, that's my big budget dream, and I'm writing it, and I'm going to try and get it made. But look at what's out there. So we'll see. We'll see if how it goes. But on the other hand, I love micro budget and low budget, no budget films. That's how I came up. Was I was doing everything myself with no crew whatsoever. So I'm comfortable with that. I don't find that as sort of a bastard stepchild or shitty version of other movies. It's a very real way of making film, and I love it for its qualities. But yeah, I want to be able to, obviously want to exercise all of your strengths, and try things out and learn things and do different things. So there's a lot of things I'd like to do, but it's just a matter of how to arrange it, and convincing people that are capable of arranging it that there's quality to it for them besides your own creative expression, which nobody cares about. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Sad but accurate, but yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious, how do you think Reunion is going to play, sort of given now the circumstances that we're in, given that so much of your audience is going to be watching this movie about a woman and her mother sort of losing perspective on reality when we're all at home kind of losing perspective on reality.
You're trapped in a house. Yeah. Oh, I can't, it's hard to imagine, I think things are different now here than in the States. Um, hopefully the right people find it. It's a film that's obviously not casting a really wide net. I think it's meant for very specific people that when they find it, they'll know it. And I hope it finds that audience. I'm sure that there's different layers of waves of experiencing it and enjoying it. So hopefully people are open to it with the right expectations. But yeah, I mean, it should be, the people who like it really love it, but it's sort of like you said, it's a unique kind of genre. So I don't know. I mean, it's being what's it called? Like isolated in a house with a kind of crazy person who's driving you nuts. There's films like that. I mean, there's a whole, we got, the Polanski films, or I mean, there's a lot of films now, especially now with single locations fitting the low budget model. There's a lot of those kinds of movies. So yeah, we'll see.
If you had to pick a desert island creepy mother movie, what would it be?
Oh my God. Uh, I'm trying to think of them all. God, actually, it's not a creepy mother movie, but the film that I discovered that I hadn't heard of was Altman's Images. I don't know if you know that film.
No, good choice. Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty crazy. It's not a mother, but I was really surprised to see that. I think it's 72. I'm not sure what year it is.
No, it
But
definitely plays along some of the same lines. No, for sure.
yeah, pretty cool.
But you know what? I hope Reunion sort of manages to fall into sort of that category, because I think it's a really fantastic film. And I just want to say congratulations on the work, and thanks for the time today, man. This was fun.
Hey, thanks a lot for checking it out. I'm really glad you like it.
All right. Cheers, Jake.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.